Cultural appropriation can be a genuine thing. People can ride roughshod over cultures, take things of theirs for their own. But like most of these new blasphemies, the moral entrepreneurs of the new blasphemy tend to take this whole thing too far and often to grift off it. And it's also often seen as only existing in one direction, so that only the dominant or oppressor culture is seen as being able to culturally appropriate from others. And it gets intermingled and mixed up with cultural appreciation, where perhaps your country, your culture, whatever, gains a huge appreciation for the fashion or the food or whatever it might be of another culture and brings it in and maybe adds their own spin and so on. And this is a perfectly healthy expression of culture, to intermingle, to mix, to take the best bits of whatever you find to construct something new. You know, this is one of the genuine strengths of multiculturalism, that it allows for this kind of cultural exchange. But as I said, the moral entrepreneurs of the new blasphemy just have to take it that bit too far. I'm in a bunch of groups about or run by creative types in the various fields in which I do stuff, and every so often one of these posts will blow up about cultural appropriation, about how we should conduct ourselves around these issues, and the parasites start to show up, the woke editors, the sensitivity readers, and so on. And last night one of these blew up about the term shaman, which is a generic term. The rationale behind stopping us from using the term shaman, that same rationale would stop us from using terms like knight or cleric or priest or whatever else. And it's just so aggravating, because it's censoriousness, just via the medium of social censure, of social and reputational attacks on anybody that doesn't happen to toe the particular line or agree 100%. And there's another big problem with this whole approach to this issue, in that their objections to the use of terms like shaman, of magic systems or traditions or whatever in our fantasy games, are often based on misconceptions that are highly parochial to the American guilt-addled white middle-class perspective. So they think when you talk about shamanic traditions or whatever, you can only be culturally appropriating from Native Americans. Well, that's not true at all. Shamanic traditions, animistic traditions, the concept of the spirit animal, these things are not exclusive to the Americas or to those relatively modern cultures that have only been wiped out perhaps in the 19th century, really. Shamanic traditions, animistic traditions, can be found all over the world and throughout history. You know, animism is one of the earliest forms of religion that emerged everywhere pretty much around the globe, just with slightly different nuances, slightly different animals, slightly different meanings, and so on. So there isn't a place in the world really where you can say that references to shamanic practices or animistic practices or appeals to spirits or ancestors or whatever, there isn't really anywhere in the world you can be where that hasn't been a tradition at some point. So you cannot culturally appropriate the idea of a shaman or a transcendental drug experience or a spirit world or omens or spirit animals, whatever, because every fucker has done it at some point in their history. And this is what I mean by it being a parochial, Americana-centric view on the whole issue. It just betrays a profound historical, occult and theological level of illiteracy in people, that they see this word, which is a very generic and broad word in the first place, and then freak out. Another problem with this is it is otherwise a near perfect Kafka trap. If you object to the idea of cultural appropriation, if you object to the particulars of this instance of claimed cultural appropriation, then you're part of the problem. You somehow can't come to your own conclusions about these things. You have to agree 100%, or you're part of the oppressor class and an enemy of some kind, which isn't a terribly useful way to go about things. And if you don't object, then this particular train keeps on running and running people down and making it harder and harder to be truly and freely creative in these arenas, because the social censure is just so strong, and it is censorship, like it or not. And then because, like a religion, it has kind of created this thing that doesn't exist, this problem that doesn't exist. Christians call it sin. Here it's called being problematic. But then they can sell you the cure, and that cure is woke editing and sensitivity readers. In industries, they're often running on razor-thin margins already and probably can't afford to take these kind of points of view on board and make these kind of changes. Plus, these people are incentivized to find problems. They are monetarily, politically, socially incentivized to find problems in manuscripts, in games, in treatments, in pilots, whatever it might be. Yeah, they have to justify their existence. They have to justify the fact that they've been hired to examine this, whatever it might be, and to demonstrate to the author, the creator, whoever that might be, that this was a worthwhile exercise because they found things that were wrong that could have caused them problems in the future. And this is an entirely parasitic and unnecessary relationship with creators. These people should instead probably be making their own things rather than passing criticism on other people's things. The solution to all of these problems is simply to make what you want, how you want, and for other people to individually make decisions about what they want to purchase, and so on. You can't have that though. There's got to be boycotts, there's got to be screaming articles telling people off for what they assume their intent was in creating X, Y, or Z. My biggest issue with all of this is the censorious nature of what is going on, and using the mob to try and panic people into making creative decisions that go against their instincts. And the grift that goes on, the unnecessary steps and the mangling of your manuscript. It's hard enough sending something you've created to an editor to get feedback, because how are they going to treat it?
To shreds, you say?
But if you then have to send it to a sensitivity reader, what are you going to get back then?
To shreds, you say?
And so that is the be-all and end-all for me, and I think I've presented the solution to that. Make what you want, buy what you want. Somehow people seem to think that's inadequate. I'm not entirely sure why or how they feel that way, but there is another aspect that really does grind my gears, and that's that this whole idea, particularly around some of these topics of cultural appropriation, is just flat out wrong. Shamanic traditions can be found anywhere in the world if you look into people's history. Dreadlocks. The Spartans had dreadlocks. They're not the sole preserve of Rastafarians or black people or whatever else, and the same goes for braids. And so it goes for most of this stuff. There's very few things that some other human culture hasn't adopted at one point or another. And quite aside from the inaccuracy, the idea that you can only wear your hair in a certain way or adopt a certain mode of dress or use a particular way of speaking purely on the basis of your race is profoundly racist, and that this is coming from people who claim to be anti-racist, and it's just breathtakingly hypocritical. To reiterate then, make what you want, buy what you want, that way everyone can be happy or unhappy to the extent that they wish. Zang.